Rubicon from 2022. People are stuck in a space station and Earth is destroyed and they have to decide what to do. You should wait for after the theme song.
Kyle's Reviews! Kyle's Reviews!
If you want to watch Rubicon, well, you shouldn't because it's really bad. But I'll put links down there. So, what's it about? In the future, there are some people, they're on a space station, and they've developed some kind of magical algae that makes oxygen and food for them. Then they're up there, and they see the Earth is covered in this brown, toxic smog. And then the three people left on the space station have a debate whether or not to try to go back to Earth and potentially help any survivors. Now that sounds interesting, and that's why I watched it. That's the description. But it's so boring. I almost turned it off. So the problem is, it introduces all these complications and world building things that are irrelevant. So they start off with this premise that Earth is polluted as it starts, but the rich have these domes, cities that they can live in. But then when the toxic smog comes, they're like, oh, it's so bad that it gets through the dome cities.
This fog is toxic, okay? These aerosols, they're all dead.
So why bother? And one of the characters is a soldier, but aside from being a good pilot, they never make anything about that. They say, oh, she's on a secret mission.
What? They didn't teach you that at Spy Academy?
But then the mission's irrelevant and they don't really, doesn't really cause a lot of drama besides one scene. She's a pilot and they show her piloting, but in the beginning they make a big deal. It's like, oh, the navigation computer's off. It says you're 150 meters away. We think you're 350 meters. And she tries to take over from the computer and they're like, no, the ship has to be AI computer controlled.
I'm switching to manual mode.
Negative. Flying manually is prohibited.
None of that matters. So why bring it up except to show she's a good pilot? And she has this thing behind her ear they keep showing, but the only time they mention it is when later on she has a health issue and they're like, that should be impossible. Oh, well, but when everybody died, we got cut off, so it's dead.
Soldiers can't get pregnant. We don't even get our periods. I'm sterile till the end of my duty.
Unless your hormone inducer loses connection with its control unit for a long enough time.
The military has a thing that only works if it's in radio contact. So again, why bring it up? And then she cuts it out, but again, it's already useless by then. They talk about the space station being old, but there's no payoff for that except possibly oh, it's old, so we have an old radio. Why not just have a normal radio? Then we start with two people going to the space station and there are some other characters there. And right away they leave. It's like, well, why get rid of them when you could have had them stick around and have some more drama? They could have, oh, the algae can't support this many people long term, so somebody's going to have to sacrifice themselves. Or they could have had more of a fight over what to do, how to save people. Instead, with just three people, there's not much of a debate. And they set up this moral quandary. It is just stupid. So spoilers here. The two young astronauts hook up. Shocking. And later on, the female astronaut, she suddenly gets sick. Well, what happens in every movie or TV show when a woman suddenly gets sick? She's pregnant. So they're like, okay, we have a chance. There are survivors on Earth, but if we go back, the re-entry could be rough and we could risk losing the baby. Or we could stay up here and raise the kid up here. But think about that. You're just going to stay in this space station. One, ignoring the fact that most space stations, they sort of lose their orbit over time. But the kid is going to grow up there with three adults. Those adults are going to die. that kid's going to be living an adult by themselves. What kind of life is that? And once that kid dies, then that's it. If you return to Earth, you may lose the pregnancy, but there are people on Earth. You could save them. You can have more. You could have more of a chance of repopulating the Earth. So it's dumb. Then there's also the very end. Again, spoilers. The kid is born on the space station. I'm not going to tell you how. Then years later, the kid's 5, 6, maybe 7, picks up a broadcast from Earth. Weirdly, it's also kids. I don't understand why. And there are people alive, and the kids are like, why don't you come down here? It's all clean and we can breathe outside now.
North. Hey, shh. Well then, ask her if you can come down here. The grown-ups are always searching for survivors anyway.
They say that we must help each other because everything is different now.
Stop it. Seriously, can't you come?
A lot of information dumped for random kids playing around on a radio to have. And then they show the kid looking out the window of the space station and Earth is clear. But like, that wouldn't happen overnight. Wouldn't they sort of notice, hey, Earth isn't brown anymore. Maybe you should start checking up. So it's just stupid. The Rubicon is terrible. 5 thumbs down. Cross the Rubicon off your list of films to watch. Do not watch this one. But please watch more reviews.